Sydney trains are back up and running, but commuters are told to expect significant delays on their travel home from work. Liam Tapper joins us now from Wynyard Station. Liam, that radio fault has been fixed.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ange. It certainly has been. We've just heard from Transport for New South Wales officials there, and they said that it has been fixed. But I guess the next issue is people trying to get home from the city tonight. So here we are. I'll give you a view here of one of the bus stops at Wynyard. A lot of course, the people are being moved from the train station out to get a bus wherever they are across Sydney tonight. This line is going back past me, and it's also up on York Street. There is a lot of people up there waiting for buses tonight. But as we heard, as you mentioned there, Transport for New South Wales, they have confirmed that communications issue has now been rectified. Of course, it caused chaos for trains right across Sydney. Every single train network, it was impacted. But let's take a listen to what those officials had to say just a short while ago.
Engineers tried to reset the system. Unfortunately, they weren't able to reset the train radio system. As a result, we cut the system across to our backup site. That switching took place around about 30 minutes ago. And about 15 minutes ago, at around 4 p.m. this afternoon, trains have progressively recommenced operations across the Sydney Trains network.
Now, there will be an investigation into just how this happened. Of course, this impacted everyone. Thousands of people, in fact, would have been impacted by this afternoon. We did hear that the system was around 5 years old, so they weren't expecting for this to happen. Of course, that's a relatively new system, you would imagine. But as I mentioned a half an hour ago, this is the control room, this communication system. It really is the control room for the whole network. So, and no doubt there will be plenty to play out for the rest of the afternoon for these poor people trying to get home.
Indeed, and commuters told to delay getting on those trains unless they absolutely have to. Thanks so much, Liam Tapper.
At 2:45 p.m. this afternoon, we experienced a failure of our critical train radio system across the Sydney rail network. For safety reasons, that meant that we had to bring trains back to platforms so that customers could safely hop off those trains. Engineers tried to reset the system. Unfortunately, they weren't able to reset the train radio system. As a result, we cut the system across to our backup site. That switching took place around about 30 minutes ago, and about 15 minutes ago, at around 4 p.m. this afternoon, trains have progressively recommenced operations across the Sydney Trains network. Whilst trains are now running again, we will see significant delays for the remainder of the PM peak period. We're asking customers to avoid travel, particularly during this next period, until we can bring trains fully back into service. And again, we apologise to customers for the interruption to services this afternoon. Safety will always be our priority. This system is a critical communication system between our rail operations centre and our train crew. And whilst the rail network was fully operational, we aren't able to operate trains safely whilst the train crew can't communicate to the rail operations centre. We've re-established that connection, we've got trains running again, and we will fully investigate the root cause of this particular incident.
Do you know what caused it? Any idea of any insight?
Our focus, really all of our engineering focus has been about getting services safely operating again. The good news is the cut over to our backup site has happened. Train services are running again now. We will fully investigate the cause of the issue, whether it was an IT related issue, a system issue. We will fully investigate the issue to ensure it doesn't happen again.
There were some suggestions that you did an update to software systems yesterday, is that correct?
There was an upgrade that was undertaken over the weekend. The early advice we have is that upgrade is unrelated to today's incident. And I might say that the incident today is extremely rare. We've not had a similar incident across the rail network with this particular system. Normally very reliable. Thankfully, the backup process, the cutover site, the recovery arrangements worked as planned, but that did create a gap in service and significant inconvenience for customers that were travelling this afternoon.
Is there any suggestion that military safety hackers might be involved in this?
Our early indication is that it's unrelated to any cyber issue. We believe it's a system-related issue, but as I said, we'll fully investigate the root cause of the incident to ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Do you have an idea of how many train services are going to stop?
We were able to bring train services back into platforms, and that's very important that no customers were trapped on trains while this incident was occurring. We safely brought trains at low speed back to platforms. the air conditioning continued to operate on trains. All of our stations and the communications to our station staff remained intact, so that was good news that we were able to keep customers updated about the delay. But we have a significant number, around 3,000 services a day that we operate across Sydney. This was coming into the PM peak period, so as you'd expect, significant impact and delays for customers that would normally be making their trip home around about that time of day.
What kind of delays are we talking to customers today? Is it going to be an hour-long delay to get home, 2 hours?
Our focus is about getting trains running again. That's now occurring. So as of around about 4 p.m. this afternoon, we've safely been able to keep trains moving. But an incident like this means that trains and train crew and the operations will be interrupted throughout the remainder of today's service. So the advice for customers is, if you haven't yet travelled and you need to travel on the rail network, think about delaying your trip until the service is fully restored. If you are travelling at the moment and you need to be somewhere, think about an alternative mode of transport, particularly where trams or buses might get you to a similar destination to rail. Otherwise, it's about waiting until the service is back up and running.
How long are people going to be expected to wait for, I guess that's the question.
Sorry?
How long should people wait for?
Customers at platforms, at stations are now on trains again, so trains are operating again. My advice would be, if you're able to delay your trip for around 60 to 90 minutes, so think about maybe travelling later in the peak hour, 5:30, 6 p.m, you'll have a much less challenging journey home on the rail network tonight.
Do you know if there's any additional strain on buses?
We have worked right across the transport network to ensure that other modes can pick up some of the travel that would have normally occurred on the rail network. Unfortunately, we carry such a load of customers each day that we're not able to move all of our customers across to alternative modes, but we have advised customers to think about their options if they do need to travel during this peak period. Many customers have done that. We've got our station staff giving updates, regular updates to customers about the impacts.
Do you expect disruptions to run until tomorrow?
We expect that the system issues have now been resolved, so we'll continue running from our backup site. We'll need to reset the timetable. At this stage, we're not expecting any impacts on the AM services tomorrow, on Thursday. The impacts will be really concentrated on the PM period of Wednesday, the period that we're in right now.
Have you ever had any issues with the same system?
We haven't had any issues with it's the digital train radio system. As I said, normally a very reliable system. We believe that the issues around upgrading the system haven't caused this particular incident, but we will fully investigate the causes to ensure it doesn't happen again.
It's a relatively new system, though, the digital radio system, isn't it? So why the problem?
Look, we will fully investigate the root cause. The system is around about 5 years old, so it's a mature system. It's been fully implemented and has been operating reliably across the system up until this incident today.
Doesn't this demonstrate how vulnerable the City Trains network is?
Look, obviously any impact like this flows through very quickly to customers and creates significant delays. And obviously we apologise for the delays that customers have experienced today. The system and the response to the outage in terms of the backup system, moving to our recovery site, those plans went exactly according to plan. So that the team were able to switch that system across and we're able to get trains up and running again. But clearly, the failure of the system in the first place has created these impacts, and that's what we're most interested to work through, the details of the incident.
When you say progressively, what does that look like for commuters on train platforms whenever trains are coming through? How often?
So normally in this period of the day, PM peak, we would run a train between every 3 and 5 minutes between services, so a very frequent service to move customers through the peak period. Given that we've had this gap in service for over an hour, it's meant that trains standing at platforms have been unable to connect to the timetabled services that they would normally do. Hence, we will have gaps in services across the PM peak. Those gaps we will do our best to plug, so we're working with the Rail Operations Centre at the moment to look at everything we can do to provide services for customers to minimise these delays. But customers should expect that during this PM peak period that rail travel will be impacted for the remainder of the day.
What's the expected gap?
The gaps between services will vary on different lines, different parts of the network, and will be dependent on the services that were operating when the outage occurred, and also the location of train crew. Given the number of our train crew finish their shifts and the next shift will be starting. So there will be impacts in coordinating some of those shift changes, some of those timetable changes. That will create some extended gaps on the network during the PM peak period. Hence, we're asking customers, if you can avoid travel, particularly in this next period, to think about delaying that trip.
About 30 minutes gap, perhaps, on some lines?
Some services will be more frequent than that, others might be more impacted. It really depends line by line, station by station, depending on the recovery plan for those particular services.
Are some lines, what lines are predicted worse than others?
At this stage, we've been able to bring all of our rail lines back up on board. So we're expecting that the impacts should be spread across the network as a whole. There'll be no one line that will be significantly worse off than others. But clearly, these kind of impacts will create an issue for customers this afternoon.
So there's no line to be impacted worse than others?
That's correct. The latest advice we have is that the services are coming back online progressively and that all lines will be serviced, but there will be gaps in that service.
Will this affect regional trains as well?
This system impacts the intercity network as well as the Metropolitan Sydney network, so there has been impacts to our intercity services to Newcastle, Wollongong and the Blue Mountains. Those services are progressively coming online along with the Sydney services. Any further questions? Thank you.